views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
In recent weeks, we've seen several instances of blackface photos surfacing on the internet. What's troubling that the photos are of prominent people in our society. Is it fair to say these photos are from years ago, but the broader conversation is racism interwoven in American culture, institutions, and politics? How's this go? Well, coming up on Perspectives, we're going to tackle that and more right now.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Let 'em know. Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime. Of course, we thank you for watching. You can watch us here on Perspectives every week here on BronxNet's Channel 67. And then also, if you've got Verizon Files, of course, that's Channel 33. And always on the World Wide Web where you can check out this show, past episodes. And if you want, even shoot us an email, be able to share your perspective with somebody else. And then also on our Facebook page, we know, as we said, social media is out there. I've got a professional page, Daren C. Jaime. You can tap into that as well. And yeah, we'll connect. But coming up on today's show, very serious issue, a 35-year-old photo of Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam. His yearbook page. It shows a person in blackface, another person in a Ku Klux Klan robe. Now, there were calls for the governor to step down, but as of the taping of this show, he's not. He's denied the photograph and, pretty much said now that he's denying the photograph at all while admitting to wearing blackface to imitate Michael Jackson at a dance contest. And our guests in the studio today are going to discuss that. They're no strangers to this show and this discussion. Tarrant-Reid and Stuart Reid. And Tarrant-Reid has written extensively about the history and culture of Africans and African Americans in New York City and the rest of the world. She's the author of the acclaimed book, Discovering Black America from the Age of Exploration to the 21st Century. Linda's currently working on the forthcoming book, Discovering Latino America from Pre-Columbian Times to the Present Day. Stuart Reid is the co-chairman of Digital Divide Partners and the Streaming University Project. He began his company back in the 80s, trying to overcome discrimination of cable television service in the South Bronx. He's also the executive producer and co-host of Community and Technology, a program exploring the nexus of community and technology on WHCR 90.3 FM. Yes, that is the voice of Harlem, my hometown. We welcome you back to the show. Good to have y'all. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Haven't seen you in a minute. And it's happy in some ways, but sad in other ways because we find ourselves still talking about this. And so I'm going to talk a little bit first about the governor, right? We've got the situation going on with the governor. And so I'll start with you, Stu. Okay. Well, we always do ladies first, but it's a new year,
Yes.
But we've seen this before.
Yes.
So give us a little bit about your thoughts about the governor.
Well, I don't so much focus on the governor per se as much as the issue. The governor, I think he handled it very poorly. Obviously, a 35-year-old photo. We've all done stuff really stupid when we were 25 years old. I think that's how old he was at the time of the photo. In my mind, he should have embraced his youthful stupidity, maybe even his youthful racism, and come out with that and acknowledge that and kind of move past it. He didn't do any of that. So to me, he's toast. He really totally mishandled the whole situation.
Should he resign?
I think so.
Okay, Lynn?
I think he should resign. I think the fact that he was 25 years old, and at 25 in 1985, you should know better. I mean, to actually put a picture of you in blackface and then a picture of, your friend in a Ku Klux Klan hood. I mean, and you're in Virginia, which is, has a history of racism, as the rest of the South. So what kind of message are you sending out in the 80s? So I don't care what he says. The fact that he's going back and forth, says to me that he feels that he has some wiggle room, and probably because the environment of Trump or the era of Trump, where people are more forgiving, the Trump base, probably doesn't feel that this is a problem at all. So, yes, he should resign. And what does this speak to? This speaks to the deeper problems that this country has, the problems that we've never resolved.
Right. And when we talk about not resolving a problem, I think when we had the Obama administration, we saw some things. We didn't see as blatant and as overt as it is right now. I said this about President Trump, that once he has gotten elected, that base has become now emboldened
That's
to
right.
the place now that we don't have to hide, we don't have to play. We
Right.
just come out and do it. And for a lot of people, they thought that it was getting better, but the reality is some of this stuff was just lying dormant, just waiting for the opportunity.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. It was never better. There's a lot of talk about post-racialism when Obama got elected. I thought that was nonsense, and clearly it's played out to be. I would say one of the positive things, if I can call it that, outcome of Trump becoming president is all this stuff has been lifted into the public discourse now.
Right.
We never heard the public media, the national media talk about white supremacy.
Right.
Was not even mentioned.
Right.
And I've been around a long time. I've been watching the media for 50 plus years. Never heard the major media discussing white supremacy. It's now an everyday topic. So I think the consciousness of the country and maybe even the world has been raised as a result of Trump and his racist behavior and attitudes, that the consciousness has been stimulated. And as you said, the stuff that was always there now is out on Front Street, and I think that's positive.
Right.
Right.
Well, and here's the other thing. You're the media specialist here. I mean, when you talk about this, the issue I have more so that identifying individuals is one thing, and calling for them to go down is one thing, right? And there's always the social media punks who always want to call for somebody to go down as soon as they say
Right.
something, right? But where are you on the bigger issue?
Right.
Because
Right.
the bigger issue still exists
Right.
that needs to be addressed,
Right.
that needs to be talked about. And that's the issue of, yes, you have racism, you have bigotry, you have white supremacy, you have white privilege, you have elitism, you have all these great things that are going on. And I don't mean great to be
Bad great.
yeah, right. These great things that are going on that sometimes are swept under the rug because we spend more time focusing
Absolutely.
on
The
the
person.
person
Right.
rather than the principle.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. Sorry.
That's okay. You're excited.
I think it was particularly important that this guy, Northam, was in medical school.
Right.
And he's
He's gonna be
now,
treating people.
Yeah, in the medical community, 25-year practicing
Right.
medicine.
Right.
Or at least influencing. I don't know how long he's been a senator versus practicing, but nevertheless, in the medical industry. And I think those attitudes are endemic in
That's
the
right.
healthcare system.
Right.
So let me cut you off for a second and say this. This is what I'm talking about, going a step further. Let me
Yeah.
jump in here, right? So here we are, we're talking about the governor. We're
Right.
talking about the governor who shows up in blackface and in the Ku Klux Klan. We would have never seen this. We would have never saw this had we not saw the book.
Right.
But the book is tied to the medical institution.
And-
And nobody says anything about the medical institution
Well, the
who,
medi-
first of all, published a book
Well, the medical institution came out today
today.
with an apology and, talking about how painful this experience has been for African Americans and other minorities, and that they're ashamed of it. But in 1985, whoever published it or whoever was responsible for it, didn't stop it, didn't feel that there was a need to pull those photographs and tell these young people, I'm not going to call them kids, these young adults, that this was a period of the history of the South that did not need to be celebrated because it's painful and that we have moved beyond this. But clearly, they had not moved beyond it. And my feeling about all of this coming to the fore, when John McCain, may he rest in peace, because I think he was really a good person, had Sarah Palin as his selection for vice president. To me, she let the genie out of the bottle. I mean, at her rallies, she was the one that started kind of unearthing and letting people, really put their feelings out in the public. And a lot of those feelings were racist. And that to me was the slow, slouch toward people, feeling it's okay to be racist.
Yeah.
That nobody's going to say anything.
Well, sort of, as we said, when we talk about media, right?
Right.
We now get the opportunity to talk about these things. One of my favorite people was on the show on Monday, Nana Camille Yarborough on Open, who always has these what I would call informational pieces about what's going on, particularly in the minority community, and showing the disparity. Because technology
Right.
is taking this to a whole nother level where we now get to see people in instant time, right? And we get to see way far back and even right up in present form, people who really are engaging in these behaviors. So talk to us a little bit about how media has actually played this out and really have become a contributing factor for better and for worse.
Yeah, absolutely. It's accelerated the whole conversation.
Right.
It's raised awareness in a really dramatic, transformative way, in that, as you said, information is instantaneously available. My buddy likes to talk about the machine in the pocket, which is the smartphone.
Right.
And it has really transformed all of our experiences in that, as you said, when something comes out, something happens, boom, there it is. It used to be, when I was growing up, I'm an older guy, you used to have to wait for the 6 o'clock news. Maybe it came on the news,
Right.
maybe it didn't.
Or the
Yeah,
newspaper.
Or the newspaper, the
Right.
morning or the late edition. I used to
Right.
have 2 editions
Yeah,
back
yeah,
in my
yeah.
day. But you had the gatekeepers of all of that
Right.
media and information.
Right.
Today,
There-
with this, there are no gatekeepers with this. Anyone, everyone has the ability to publish, get information out there, and tell their story.
And the
That's power.
other thing is
Hold
that
on,
it's,
I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna let you pick it up when we come back. They tell me I gotta go to break, and then we're gonna come back talking about where we are today. I got a studio full of people, and I can guarantee you, most of them don't know anything about television ending with the American flag at night. You don't know anything about that. 'Cause cable is 24/7 a day. I'll talk to you. Be right back in a minute. Continuing our conversation, talking about the governor of Virginia, blackface, Ku Klux Klan, the images that continue to rise. What we're talking about today is literally a rise in revelation to, something that's been going on culturally for a long time, and that discussion continues. Linda, we were talking before the break.
what I was talking about is, just to piggyback on what Stuart was saying about technology, is that right now everybody can expose everybody. Everybody has the power because people are online, people can say whatever they want. There is no real censorship And it's a very dangerous place where we are today. So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that the governor was exposed as a racist. I think it's a good thing. I think you're going to have to balance out the good with the bad. As far as racism in this country today, it's a very long conversation. It's education, and it's the conversation that Stuart says has evolved since, Trump has been in the White House. And yes, I agree, it's an important issue.
The latest conversation, and I think this is a conversation provoking, is Liam Neeson. And the fact that he has said that he had a friend and got raped by a black person, believed to be, allegedly, and his thoughts of wanting to go out and actually go out and kill
the
a black
person.
person. And he comes out and he says, yes, I thought this, it was wrong thinking, it was bad, it was this. But, as of this point, you've got people now who are saying, listen, want to take his job, he doesn't deserve to be in movies, we shouldn't be watching his stuff. But isn't part of what we're trying to have a conversation about race, racism, and what people's deep-seated feelings getting it out,
Right.
and and so they've said he may have committed career suicide, and I'm like, why? Because he admitted something, he apologized for it, and if we're honest, that's on every race. There are white people, there are black people walking around thinking about killing white people every day, So the hypocrisy, if you will, give me something.
I agree. It's totally hypocritical. First of all, I applaud him for acknowledging his feelings and putting it out there. That took a lot of courage,
Right.
especially in this environment, for him to come out and say that publicly. And to your other point, when something traumatic happens to us or to someone we love, you get enraged. And not just to us, when you see some of the images from, the kids being hosed back in the 50s. Emotion bubbles up again inside me for stuff that happened 50 years ago when I see images of the lynchings
Right.
and the parties, the picnics that the white folks used to have at the lynchings. I get enraged, and I have felt, I want to
can't
do
see.
something. I want to hurt somebody.
Or you're angry
Yeah.
at white people.
Yeah,
Come on, let's be
exactly,
honest, right?
exactly.
So what is so I'm not saying what is you want, if you have anger, you have feelings, same thing.
Right.
Well,
Yep.
I think basically, to put in perspective what Liam Neeson was talking about, I think the question was, where do you go when you're trying to act and what do you pull on? And I think he talked about this incident as some place that he goes when he wants to feel anger. And I don't think he expected the reaction to what he had said, because I don't even think he was thinking about the fact that he was talking about killing a black person, which is what we go to. I find that it's really important to educate our children, educate the people around us as to the history that we've all experienced. Because I think what happens is we're isolated, we're in our little boxes, and we don't really acknowledge the pain and the history that people have experienced. So as far as Liam Neeson is concerned, it's his story, it's his narrative. Do I understand it? Probably. If I were him, would I have talked about it? Probably not.
And that's the scary part, though, because here it is, because we're always talking about, when we get in situations, we need to have a conversation. We need to have a conversation about race. Well, what good is having a conversation if I can't put out my true feelings?
Yeah.
What good is having a conversation? I'm not saying I agree, right? I'm not saying this, so don't write me, email me, talk about, he's a good. No, I think it's wrong. But I think when we talk about having a conversation, you gotta have a conversation. And if you're having a conversation, these things have to come out. You get it out. And I get to see what a racist thing is. I get to hear what somebody, and both sides, because we're also, we need to have a conversation on race. And so what are we supposed to do? I'm white, you're black, we're black. and
Let's
this is what
talk
I do,
about it.
Right. I go to public school, I go to No, we have to really talk about what these things are, about racism, and not just about racism, but really about bias, because what we see played out a lot is bias and privilege. When I watch a young man who's in a hotel room calling his mother in the lobby of a hotel room, and he's got a key to go to that hotel room, and he still gets thrown out for that. You know, that's not just
yes,
racism.
yes, the black
That's also
gentleman.
an implicit bias
Right.
that people become complicit with.
Right, and it's based on appearance.
Right.
It's based on the color of one's skin. So that happened during slavery. I mean, it was premeditated. The reason why we have black slaves is so that when they escaped, they could be identified and brought back. With that in mind, there was this whole marketing and branding campaign that showed that portrayed blacks as ignorant, as scary, as animalistic, and that thought has continued throughout the history of blacks in America. So when you see a black person out of place in the lobby of a hotel and the cop comes by and because he's called and says, you don't belong here, that's his prejudice talking. That's him looking at that black person and saying, you don't belong here. This is a place that's not for you.
Let me take a break.
Okay.
I had to cut it off. Now I got to cut you off. You get the first word when we come back.
Okay.
Be right back in a second, right after this. And we're back here continuing our conversation, talking about race in America, racism, white supremacy, bigotry, violence, all these things that are taking part that we're seeing more and more prevalent. I know before the break, I cut you off, Gabe.
It's okay. One of the things that I want to talk about, you're talking about we need to have a conversation about race. What I think that where the conversation really needs to focus is on the awareness and understanding of white folks of their own racism, and not personally and institutionally. That's why I applaud Neeson in that he acknowledged his own racism. He put it out there. Most white folks, some of my best friends are black. I'm not racist. They have no awareness of their own personal racism, and it's deep-seated. So until they explore or have some encounter in a situation, they don't even see it.
Or I'll even take a step back. There's racism, right? And then you also have bias, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And you have bias that actually leads to privilege. And because I have privilege, I now am biased. Because,
Right.
When we talk about, and I've had some situations before where in a conversation with white people, I didn't know that existed. That's bias. I mean, that's privilege. Because you've been privileged enough not to be in the trenches to
Right.
know exactly
Right.
what's going on. And so therefore, you think that, it's not a problem, when the reality is it's a problem. There are other things that come as a result of this. Because when you talk about this, you talk about jobs.
Right.
We're talking about economy. We're talking about,
Housing.
We're talking about gentrification. You're talking about voting rights. You're talking about all these things that actually appertain to
That's right.
this particular act that plays out in many different ways. When you're talking about redlining a district,
Right.
that's racism.
Right.
When you talk about gentrification, that's racism.
Racism.
I bring it home to the Bronx. You got the piano district now. You got Harlem that's actually changing. And you've got, a group of people who actually say, listen, you know what? It's no longer going to be called Harlem. It's going to be called Soha.
Wow.
Right. So it's part of that branding and the marketing. And all of that is about attracting a certain type of person. And so basically what happens with a lot of the racism is that people are not together. I mean, people do not understand how another, group interacts. So this kind of isolation breeds the racism because you're only around people that are similar to you. So, I mean, I remember when I was younger and I was working at ABC, and I had to go to an event. It was in the 70s, and I was one of the few black people in the programming department. I had to go to this public event with other executives. I was the only black person in the room. And to be the only black person in the room and to hear the hush, I mean, audible, that, you know, what is she doing here? I mean, it's gotten better, but there's still people who live like that. They have no exposure. They might have exposure to their cleaner, to their, you know, to their gardener, to their babysitter, but those people are not in their lives.
Yeah, we just came out of the Super Bowl, right?
Right.
And here you got the Super Bowl. NFL makes $78 billion a year in its teams, between the NFL and teams, $78.4 billion. Out of the NFL, 70% of the players are black, but yet and still, when you look at the NFL, there is only 2 minority owners, and the minority owner is one an Asian American and a Pakistani American. One is up at the Buffalo with the Buffalo Bills. No African Americans yet. And I've often said that it's very cool. I mean, it's very cruel, but it's a very real message because you don't have African American owners. You've got simply no coaches whatsoever. But then you've got 70% of guys who are out there on the field who look like that. And the message that you send is you're good enough to play the game, but you can't own and you can't manage.
That's
and
right.
that seems to be the message that wants to be
Absolutely
sent.
is.
That y'all just keep playing the game.
Absolutely is.
But what we're finding right now
Right.
is people aren't just playing the game anymore. People are speaking up.
That's right. People like LeBron James, for instance, where, you know, white folks say, hey, just shut up and dribble. Well,
Right.
he's not shutting up and he ain't just dribbling.
And
He's
Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
Right,
I
right.
mean, who they totally have blackballed.
That's right.
I mean, and this,
I mean, yeah. I mean, they and the list goes on.
But the economic discrimination is
Key.
palpable. I mean,
Right.
it really starts there, if you ask me.
Right.
And it's, you know, it's tied into the racial thing because there really is, in my mind, a conspiracy, spoken, unspoken, to make sure that we stay on the bottom. We can sing, we can dance, we can play ball, we can make a nice amount of money, and they'll show us off as, oh, look, we're paying these guys. But you can't own,
Right.
you can't control, you can't run the media, which is a big thing. There used to be some black ownership in radio, in television.
No,
that
no,
has
no.
vanished.
Yeah.
It's gone.
That's another
It's
story.
gone.
That's
Right.
another show.
Right.
Linda, Stuart, thank you so much for coming and sharing. We're out of time here.
Okay.
That was
5 hours
quick.
goes quick. I know, right? When the issue is hot,
Yeah.
it goes by real quick. That's it for us here on Perspectives. Daren Jaime say, take care, God bless. Until next time we meet, stay safe. Share your perspective with somebody else. It just might make a difference in somebody else's life. Take care.
Messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light, cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?